Japan is beautiful. It's serene, it's spiritual, but beneath that silence, something lingers. From suicide forests to sealed tunnels and cursed ruins, this is a country where the line between the living and the dead grows dangerously thin. These aren't legends, these are real places, documented, investigated, and feared. And if you ever visit them, be warned, some doors once opened don't close behind you. At the base of Mount Fuji in Japan's Yamanashi Prefecture lies a forest known by many names. Officially it's called Aokigahara, but locals call it Jukai, the Sea of Trees. And to those who have entered and felt its silence press against their skin, it's something else entirely. A place where the living and the dead exist side by side. When you enter Aokigahara, the quiet isn't calming. It's heavy, dense, unnatural. It clings to your skin and makes your ears strain for sound, any sound. But you'll find none. Not birdsong, not wind, not even the rustle of branches. And that's when the dread creeps in. You begin to realize it's not silent because nothing is there. It's silent because something is holding its breath, watching, waiting. Aokigahara's reputation as a place of death didn't begin with modern times. Long before the rise in suicides, the forest held dark purpose. In Japan's feudal era, it was whispered that ubasute took place here. That is the brutal practice of abandoning elderly or sick family members during times of famine, left to die in the cold stillness of the woods. Those deaths, soaked in helplessness, pain, and isolation, are believed to have seeped into the very soil. Beneath your feet lies hardened lava from Mount Fuji's massive eruption in 864 AD, forming a twisted terrain of jagged volcanic rock, gaping pits, and uneven ground blanketed in thick moss. Even skilled hikers report becoming disoriented within minutes. The forest shifts, conceals, and confuses. In Shinto and Buddhist teachings, suicide, especially in moments of despair or rage, can leave a soul restless. These become yurei, Japanese ghosts, fettered to the mortal realm, their emotions unresolved, and their deaths unnatural. Yurei are often described as wearing white funeral garments, their hair long, dark, and unkempt. It is said they wander the forest, seeking others who carry the same grief, the same sorrow. And when they find them, they attach themselves, feeding on pain, echoing it. Even nature resists logic in Aokigahara. Compasses spin wildly when placed directly on the ground, confused by the magnetic-rich lava beneath. GPS signals falter, vanish, paths disappear. The tree canopy is so thick, sunlight barely touches the ground, making noon feel like dusk. Explorers say the forest bends space. Some report walking in circles despite using markers. Others say the air changes. It becomes denser, harder to breathe, as though you're walking through something you can't see. But perhaps the most haunting part of Aokigahara is what it leaves behind. Tents, sleeping bags, pairs of shoes placed neatly side by side, jackets slung across branches, backpacks filled with snacks never eaten. Some trees bear strings of bright plastic tape, breadcrumbs left by those uncertain if they will return. These trails stretch forward and then just end. Volunteers who search for bodies often bring music. Some sing aloud, not for comfort, but to drown out the phantom voices. Whispered things in the trees. Voices that mimic, that tempt, that beg. Many recovery teams have heard them, but none can explain them. Visitors, both tourists and locals, have come back with stories of hearing footsteps behind them but turning to find no one, of sudden overwhelming panic or depression that strikes without reason, forcing them to leave the forest immediately, of white shapes glimpsed between trees, figures standing still for hours, never moving, never blinking, of notes sometimes scrawled onto tree bark, other times left on crumpled pieces of paper. I'm sorry, forgive me, tell them I loved them. And even the wind, even that feels wrong. One volunteer once said, it whispers like it's speaking a language you're not meant to understand. The towns surrounding Aokigahara avoid the forest. Taxi drivers are instructed not to drop passengers at the forest's edge unless they're clearly tourists or hikers who confirm they have written plans. Police patrols roam the outskirts, broadcasting messages through loudspeakers, pleading with anyone inside not to take their own life. Even paranormal investigators often refuse to enter alone, because in Aokigahara, if you hear your name whispered from behind you, do not answer, do not turn around. No one in that forest should know your name. Hidden deep within the quiet woods of Hachioji lies the crumbled trace of a forgotten shrine. No signs, no gates, just moss-covered stones and broken concrete where something sacred once stood. But those who stumble upon the site say the silence here is not peaceful. It's bracing, watching, and if you linger too long, that silence breaks. Doryodo was once a modest Buddhist temple built centuries ago and nestled along the Kobotoke Trail in western Tokyo. For a time, it served as a resting point for pilgrims and hikers crossing the mountains. But over time, the temple decayed, and then in the space of 2 tragic decades, it was forever marked by blood. In 1963, a temple caretaker, an elderly woman, was found murdered on the premises. The case disturbed the local community, but eventually faded into obscurity. Then exactly 10 years later, in 1973, another tragedy struck. A young female university student was reported missing. Her body was eventually discovered near the ruins of Doryodo. She had been murdered and dumped at the site. The primary suspect was a professor, a man she had reportedly been involved with. He confessed. 2 brutal crimes and 1 forgotten shrine. After the second murder, reports of disturbing activity around the ruins began to surface. Visitors, especially at night, claimed to hear screams echoing through the woods, long, drawn out, unmistakably female. The sound would twist between the trees, always distant yet near, and always impossible to trace. Others reported seeing a woman weeping silently in the shadows near the site. When approached, she would vanish. Hikers complained of sudden disorientation, of following marked trails only to loop back to the ruins again and again. Flashlights flickered, batteries died. The deeper one stepped into the forest surrounding the shrine, the heavier the air seemed to become. Some described an overwhelming wave of dread or nausea that would strike without warning, forcing them to leave. In the early 1980s, officials finally demolished the remnants of Doryodo, believing it might quell the unease and put lingering spirits to rest. But it had the opposite effect. According to spiritualists, destroying a sacred site, especially one soaked in tragedy, can unbind the energies within it. What was once held in place by walls and ritual was now free to drift, cling, and linger. The hauntings only intensified. Japanese ghost hunters and independent investigators who have visited the site since its demolition have reported unsettling patterns. Sudden battery drainage in cameras and flashlights, distorted audio playback filled with static, sobbing, or screams. In one case, an investigator reportedly went missing for 2 hours, later found dazed and confused near the ruins with no memory of what happened. Today, the Doryodo site is avoided by locals. Some refuse to even speak about the murders, and others won't go near the forest trail at all, especially after dark. Deep in the misty mountains of Fukuoka lies a tunnel so feared, so saturated with horror, that the government itself sealed it, not due to natural disaster, but because people kept vanishing inside. They say the concrete wasn't poured to keep nature out. It was poured to keep something else in. Constructed in the 1940s, the Inunaki Tunnel, known ominously as the Howling Dog Tunnel, was once part of a mountain road leading to an isolated community. But over time, the path was abandoned and then cursed. Visitors began reporting paranormal encounters so disturbing that Inunaki became a national ghost story. Apparitions flashing across rearview mirrors, disembodied screams of men and of dogs echoing from deep within, an oppressive sensation of being watched, not passively but aggressively, shadows that moved against the direction of light. The tunnel's name, Inunaki, means howling dog. Locals insist that that's no coincidence. Many believe the tunnel is a spiritual gateway, something ancient, older than the forest, older than the road, watching from the dark. In 1988, the tunnel's sinister reputation became cemented in reality. A group of teenagers abducted a man and dragged him into the old, decaying tunnel. There, they tortured and murdered him, setting his body on fire. The crime shocked Japan, and for many, it confirmed what they already suspected. The tunnel wasn't just haunted, it was cursed. That act of violence, they say, stained the land, infusing it with rage and fear, drawing in the dark energy that now refuses to leave. Not far beyond the tunnel, legends speak of something stranger. A sign, worn and half swallowed by moss, is said to read, "The laws of Japan do not apply past this point." It's the first warning for those who dare search for Inunaki village, a place that according to myth lies hidden in the forest beyond the tunnel. They say the village is cut off from the outside world. Phone signals fail, maps become useless, strangers are not welcome, and once you enter, you may not be allowed to leave. Official records list no such village, but some explorers claim they found collapsed shacks, faded banners, and even a working lantern swinging softly from a rusted hook, though the air around it was still. No wind, no sound, just that slow, unnatural sway. Even during the day, the tunnel doesn't rest. Those who visit and return speak of phones and cameras suddenly dying, SD cards wiped or corrupted, low growling from behind the sealed barrier, scratches on cars parked nearby, and in one chilling tale, a man heard his own voice calling from within the tunnel, begging, desperate, like a version of him was trapped on the other side, pleading to be freed. Today, Inunaki Tunnel is sealed in concrete, its entrance surrounded by fences and warning signs. Police and forest patrols keep an eye on the area, yet still, thrill seekers and ghost hunters arrive, hoping to see or hear something. Most leave quickly, some leave shaken, and some don't talk about what they saw at all. But those who have come closest say this: if you ever hear barking in the distance, leave immediately. And if that barking stops suddenly, run. It means you're not alone anymore. It was meant to be paradise, a luxurious seaside resort overlooking Okinawa's sparkling coastline. Nestled beside the historic walls of Nakagusuku Castle, it would have grand wedding halls, sweeping gardens, and tranquil rooms for the elite. But instead, what stands today is a decaying skeleton of broken dreams. Choked in vines, shrouded in silence and steeped in fear. The hotel was never finished. The workers fled, and the developer, he vanished. In the 1970s, a wealthy businessman envisioned an opulent resort beside Nakagusuku Castle, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But the land he chose had long been considered spiritually sacred, a place locals and monks avoided for centuries. From the very beginning he was warned. Monks from nearby temples pleaded with him to stop. They say the land was inhabited by spirits, that it was cursed, and that disturbing it would bring ruin. He ignored them, and construction began anyway. Almost immediately, things began to go wrong. Workers reported feeling sick on site, headaches, fevers, dizziness with no cause. Some claimed to see figures wandering the unfinished corridors. Tools vanished or were moved inexplicably. Whispering voices, chanting, crying echoed through bare concrete walls. One worker fell from scaffolding. He survived, but when he woke up, he refused to speak about what he saw before the fall. He quit the job and left Okinawa. No one ever heard from him again. Still, construction pushed forward until the developer, growing frustrated by the superstitions, decided to spend a night at the site himself to prove it was safe. The next morning he left. He was never seen again. After that, the project was abruptly abandoned. No official reason, no final statement, just silence. Today, the Nakagusuku Hotel ruins loom like a forgotten fortress. Vines crawl through every crack. Entire sections remain incomplete, some rooms end in sheer drops, and others are filled with rusted rebar jutting out like broken ribs. Graffiti scars the walls. The locals whisper that some of the symbols were never painted by visitors. They say those markings have been there from the beginning, etched into the stone by something older. The deeper you go inside, the colder it becomes, unnaturally so, even in Okinawa's sweltering heat. Urban explorers and ghost hunters who've dared to enter report sudden nausea or disorientation, especially near the basement levels. Shadows darting behind pillars seen clearly, then gone. Children's laughter coming from the upper floors, despite the stairs being gone. A sensation of being followed. Eyes watching from doorways that lead nowhere. Some believe the spirits that remain aren't simply restless. They are angry, disturbed by the violation of sacred land. Paranormal teams who filmed there refused to return, citing a string of personal misfortunes that began shortly after their visits. Illnesses, accidents, and losses they couldn't explain. To this day, locals avoid the ruins. Taxi drivers won't drive near them after sunset. And some spiritual leaders continue to warn, what was buried there was meant to stay buried. The hotel was never supposed to rise. And perhaps it never really did. Tokyo is alive. Glowing neon, packed subways, and streets that never sleep. But beneath its polished surface, in the tangled edges of the city, there are stories it tries to bury. Whispers of a mansion, a bloodline, and a ritual that was never meant to be seen. They call it Himuro Mansion, and if the legends are true, it was built to stand between our world and something darker. Its exact location is unknown. Some say it stood on the outskirts of Shibuya. Others say it was quietly demolished, erased from records. But among urban explorers and paranormal researchers, the name Himuro is spoken with unease. At the heart of the legend lies an ancient and horrifying ritual, the strangling ritual. Once every generation, the Himuro family would choose a girl at birth, the ritual maiden. She was raised in total isolation, never allowed to see the outside world. No visitors, no voices beyond the family. She was to remain spiritually pure. When the time came, she would be bound hand and foot with the sacred ropes, ritually prepared for her purpose. Then she would be torn apart, limb by limb. Her blood would soak the ropes, her body offered to seal a portal to the underworld, said to exist beneath the mansion. A sacrifice to keep evil spirits from breaking through. But one year the ritual failed. The legend says that the chosen girl, isolated for years, fell in love with a young man from the nearby village. Somehow he reached her, spoke to her, showed her the world beyond the walls. and when the time came, she was no longer pure. The ritual was performed, but the seal didn't hold. Terrified of what they had unleashed, the Himuro family made a decision. They reenacted the ritual on themselves. One by one, the family members were sacrificed in the same brutal manner. Blood spilled across the grounds, robes soaked red. An act of desperation, a final offering, and no one survived. Even decades later, those who visit the area where the mansion supposedly stood report deeply unsettling phenomena. Blood-like stains that appear on walls and vanish, rope burns mysteriously forming on wrists, ankles, or necks after visiting, cries and chanting, soft and feminine, from nowhere, sudden unnatural drops in temperature, especially near ruined foundations, unshakable urges to run or look behind as if being watched, and visions of rope, of blood, and of a girl in white. One photographer who documented the site vanished not long after. His final film roll contained a blurred photo of a woman in a white kimono standing at the edge of the forest, her face obscured, her eyes seemingly locked on the camera. The legend of Himuro Mansion became so well known that it inspired the creators of the video game series Fatal Frame. The developers confirmed the story's core, ritual sacrifice, spiritual seals, ghost photography was directly based on the Himuro tale. Though names and details were changed, the shadow of the mansion lives on through the game's eerie narrative. Some say the mansion was torn down, its land quietly purified. Others claim it never existed at all, that it was just a story passed around like an urban myth. Bridges are supposed to connect, but some do more than link land. They tether the past to the present, and some, like the one at Oiran Buchi, are built not with stone and timber, but with secrets, screams, and betrayal. They say the wind here doesn't whistle, it wails. And when you walk across the bridge, you'll feel it, the cold pull from below, something calling you to look down. In the shadows of Japan's feudal era, the cliffs of what is now Oiran Buchi hid a secret gold mine, but gold breeds greed and secrecy. To keep the mine's location hidden, the warlords brought in Oiran, high-ranking courtesans to entertain the miners and distract officials. These women, likely dozens of them, lived nearby in isolation, luxurious prisoners never told what fate awaited them. When the Takeda clan collapsed, so did their need for secrecy. But there was one problem. The Oiran knew too much. They were told they were being relocated, led in silence to the bridge, and then, one by one, thrown into the gorge below. Some say they were tied together and pushed. Others say they stood on a wooden plank rigged to collapse. But all versions end the same: betrayal in cold blood. Locals say the land never forgot. For generations, they have avoided the gorge, especially after sunset. But visitors, they speak of things: female voices, soft sobbing, then wailing from beneath the bridge, sudden gusts of wind that carry whispers or worse, screams. The distinct icy feeling of being watched as they cross, vertigo, dizziness, and even the sensation of being lightly pushed from behind. Footsteps behind them slow and deliberate, though no one is there. Spiritual experts believe the women became onryo, vengeful spirits bound to the site by betrayal, rage, and a violent death. Even in recent decades, strange incidents continue to plague the area. Hikers found at the bottom of the gorge, no signs of struggle, no clear reason why they fell. A tour guide who fainted mid-bridge, later whispering that he saw a procession of women in kimono silently walking beside him. A young woman who visited for a dad and later discovered deep bruises around her wrist, as if something or someone had held her tightly. Some visitors leave uneased, others leave haunted, but many say the bridge never feels empty. Nearby shrines still offer incense and whispered prayers to the forgotten women. Locals who do visit never stay after dark. Some leave coins at the bridge's edge, an apology, an offering. The name Oiran Buchi means courtesan's gorge, but to those who know what happened, it means something else. These 6 places are real, documented, visited, but not always survived unscarred. Japan is a land of beauty, but also one of deep spiritual weight. And some places were never meant to be disturbed. So if you find yourself at the edge of a forest or face to face with something that shouldn't exist, don't film it, don't speak to it, and above all, don't look.